Power usually announces itself. Kings build palaces, empires raise banners, generals march with armies. History teaches us that authority arrives loudly, but one gospel tells a different story. No royal genealogy, no elaborate birth narrative, no long introduction, only a voice, crying in the wilderness then. Movement, immediately, immediately, immediately. As though creation itself has begun breathing again. Perhaps Mark is asking a question. What if true power does not demand to be served, but chooses to serve? Welcome to Code of Scripture. Today, we continue our journey through the Code of Scripture. Matthew introduced the king. Mark reveals something unexpected. The king does not come wearing the symbols humanity associates with power. He comes healing, restoring, serving, moving toward those everyone else avoids. This is Mark, the servant king. Mark begins with an extraordinary image. Jesus enters the Jordan. The heavens are torn open, not open gently. Torn, the language is violent. A separation that has existed since humanity's exile from Eden is suddenly ripped apart throughout Scripture. The heavens often symbolize the unseen realm. Earth represents the visible. Mark's first image suggests something astonishing. The distance between heaven and earth has begun collapsing. Notice how the gospel ends. The temple veil is also torn. The book begins with heaven opening. It ends with the sanctuary opening. The movement is intentional. What began at the river is completed at the cross. The Jordan River is more than geography. Water repeatedly marks transformation throughout Scripture. Creation emerges from the deep. Noah passes through judgment into a new world. Israel crosses the Red Sea. Joshua crosses the Jordan. Each crossing represents leaving one identity to receive another. Jesus enters these same waters, not because he requires cleansing, but because he steps into humanity's story. The river becomes a threshold. Crossing it means the old world has begun giving way to something new. Every baptism afterward echoes this moment. Water is no longer simply water. It becomes the symbol of a life crossing into another kingdom. Immediately, the Spirit leads Jesus into the wilderness. Notice something remarkable. The wilderness is not where evil sends him. The Spirit leads him there. Throughout Scripture, deserts reveal what cities conceal. Cities provide distraction. The wilderness removes it without comfort. Identity becomes impossible to fake. Mark's wilderness is more than a location. It becomes the landscape of the soul. Every person eventually enters one, a season where distractions disappear, where certainty feels distant, where every false foundation begins crumbling. The wilderness strips away illusion until only truth remains. Mark moves rapidly from miracle to miracle. Blind eyes open, demons flee, storms become still, the sick rise at first glance. These appear to be isolated miracles. Look closer. Every miracle reverses a consequence of Genesis. Chaos becomes order. Isolation becomes community. Disease becomes wholeness. Darkness gives way to light. The miracles are not random displays of power. They are signs, windows. Each one whispers the same message. Creation itself is beginning to heal. The kingdom is not merely arriving, it is restoring. One of Mark's greatest mysteries appears again and again after miracles. Jesus often tells people not to speak about them. Why? Some scholars call this the messianic secret. Symbolically, it invites another possibility. Truth cannot simply be announced. It must be encountered. Knowledge alone transforms no one. Experience does. The kingdom is not propaganda. It is revelation, like a seed beneath soil. Its greatest work happens where no one can see it. Mark repeatedly returns to seeds. Growth, hidden beginnings. The greatest movements in history often begin invisibly. Then Mark reaches its greatest inversion. Humanity expects victory through domination. Mark reveals victory through surrender. The throne becomes wood, the crown becomes thorns. The king appears defeated, yet this apparent defeat becomes the gospel's greatest victory. The cross stands at the center of history because it reverses humanity's understanding of power. The strongest act looks like weakness, the highest authority chooses humility, the servant becomes king, precisely because he serves. Mark ends where another story once began. A garden, a stone, mourning, women arrive expecting death instead. They encounter absence. The empty tomb is not merely proof of resurrection. It symbolizes new creation. Genesis opened with darkness, giving way to light. Mark closes with death, giving way to life. Creation itself begins again, not by returning to Eden, but by moving beyond it. The kingdom is not restoring yesterday, it is creating tomorrow. Mark quietly asks one question. What if true authority never needs to dominate? What if genuine power restores instead of controls? What if greatness kneels before it stands? Perhaps the servant king overturns more than Rome. Perhaps he overturns every empire humanity has ever built, including the invisible empires inside ourselves, the kingdoms of pride, fear, control, violence. Mark does not merely describe miracles. He invites us to imagine an entirely different architecture of power. The heavens were torn, the river became a threshold, the wilderness became preparation, storms obeyed, darkness retreated, the cross became a throne, the grave became a doorway. The servant king had begun restoring creation, one soul at a time. This has been a Mysterious Encounters entry into the Code of Scripture. The archive is never closed. Sometimes the greatest king is the one who first kneels.